There are organizations out there that are leveraging Salesforce in powerful ways to serve their customers. Trailside Talk is here to shine a light on their successes and their stories.
I'm your host, Hannah Thompson. Join me on the trail to CRM success as we dig into some real-life, high-impact journeys, from challenges to triumphs and everything in between. Let's explore this story together. Welcome to Trailside Talk. I am joined today by Pete Todd, president of Veltiosi Advisors. And we here at WhiteRock have had the pleasure of serving several companies alongside Pete over the past few years. Pete, we think very highly of you, and we know you've got a really neat background story. So if you will, would you mind kicking us off by telling us about yourself and your background?
Sure. Well, first of all, Hannah, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you and anyone who's listening. Yeah, my background, I live in Southern California. I grew up in Southern California, and I went to school at USC in Los Angeles. My undergraduate program was biomedical engineering. I worked as an engineer for about 3 years after graduation. But a funny thing happened when I started working in engineering. I realized I enjoyed talking about my engineering work more than actually going back to my cube and doing it. And so I went back to USC, got my MBA, then went into technical marketing for Toshiba Semiconductor. And it was a great job because I loved working with engineers, and I also enjoyed meeting customers. And so, I saw marketing and sales at that time as just an opportunity to problem solve. So to me, I wasn't really a sales guy. I was more of an engineer, just problem solving in a sales environment. But then when a role opened up at Toshiba for me to really join the sales team, I jumped at it and then started my career in sales. I had no idea then that it would lead to where it's led me today. And so several promotions later, I left Toshiba into a series of global sales leadership roles where I worked with smaller companies in many cases and helped them grow, and in many cases get acquired. I traveled around the world. I met customers and just sold a lot of stuff.
So now you're at Veltiosi Advisors. Why did you start it, and what's the meaning behind the company name?
Well, the meaning is kind of a funny story. My mother is 100% Greek. And so when I decided that I would start my own company to do consulting work, I didn't know what to name it. I eventually settled on the name Veltiosi because Veltiosi is the Greek word for improvement. And so Veltiosi Advisors just seeks to help companies get their sales act together and help them improve in what they do. I decided to do this because after a pretty long career of working for others, I wanted to work for myself. And more importantly, I wanted to work more on a project basis where I could do a lot of coaching and improvement, sometimes and very often in parallel, rather than just working for one company. And so that's how I decided to do it. I launched it about 4 years ago. My timing, probably in hindsight, could have been better. I launched it almost immediately after the COVID shutdown started happening. And so made for a very interesting year about 4 years ago.
Wow, yeah, absolutely. We got linked up through your relationship with Aligned Capital Partners. How did you get into the high value role that you're in with them?
Yeah, so along the way, I met people in my past jobs that had ties into ACP. And it was just networking more than anything. I mean, ACP has a tremendous reputation of not only being good at what they do, but being just great individuals, great character individuals. And so I knew that was the type of group I would love to apply my experience to. But how I got connected to them was just strictly networking, and I consider myself very fortunate to have met them along the way.
We're certainly glad that you did.
Thank
Um,
you.
yeah. How have you mastered partnering with these ACP companies to deliver value to them?
Well, mastering is a tricky question because I think I'm always learning and I'm always trying to deliver value to the companies. But I think the way to answer this question is to understand what ACP does. ACP is a private equity group that targets the lower mid market in amongst companies. So these are companies that are great companies that have had growth and but they're not really fully professionalized yet, but they're great businesses. So I think the first step in trying to add value to them is really understanding, where they're at. And typically where they're at is they've grown and they just need help in professionalizing what they're doing. And that extends to how they operate and manage their sales operations, their IT, their marketing, in some cases their finance. It's really across the spectrum. And so I think the first step in mastering this is to really understand where they are and really, again, have a vision for where they need to go.
That makes perfect sense. Kind of along the same lines, how do you foster success in these companies?
Well, I mean, it kind of the same answer. ACP has a very, really a fantastic support plan for sales teams when they acquire them, and it's been a process that's evolved. But in general, ACP understands that many of these companies aren't professionalized, and so they invest in a process that is referred internally as the sales playbook. They want to put a sales playbook in place. And the playbook comes from the companies where a very talented consultant by the name of Mike Griego. Mike has been involved in all of the playbook activity that I've been involved in, and then some. He goes back even further with ACP. But what Mike does is come in, work with the teams, and essentially put the content together, which is called the playbook, which represents best practices. And so at my first ACP company, that's where I met Mike. And again, fostering success really starts with the assessment of where they're at, what's working, what's not. And then the playbook then gets into talking about, the proper org structure, personnel, what skills are needed, what roles they should have, how to set goals, how to put an opportunity pipeline together that would accurately capture the stage of any opportunity in the sales process. And in many cases, it means putting a formal sales process together. And then that leads to forecasting, territory planning, account planning, and along the way, a ton of one-on-one coaching. So I'm doing what I love doing, but there's coaching that happens every day because you're pouring your experience into these companies that in some cases have never really been exposed to some of these ideas and bringing them along. And that's how ACP wants the value to be imparted. They want to grow the sales organically. And again, the playbook is a big part of that. And then coaching around the playbook has been a very big part of what I've done.
With utilizing the playbook and getting plugged in with that, there's some change and some culture change that comes with that. What's your methodology for managing that change and culture change?
Yeah, well, it's again, every company is a little bit different, but they all are these lower mid-market companies, and so we talk to them as companies, but really, I always look at it's a collection of people, and again, you have to recognize where they've been, and then project to where they want them to go. And maybe a good way to answer your question is to think of the analogy of, let's say someone doesn't exercise very much, and but they all of a sudden, whether they have it or whatnot, they have a goal of, I want to run a half marathon. Well, that's 13 miles. And running 13 miles when you've never exercised, the last thing you would ever do is just run out of your house and try to go complete 13 miles. You have to work very carefully and approach it very carefully to say, okay, today we're going to just walk around the block, and then maybe you'll jog a mile, and then maybe you'll jog 3 miles, and then maybe you'll go for a faster run at 3 miles. Next thing you know, you're doing 3, 4, 6 miles. Maybe you squeeze it out to 9. Next thing you know, you're able to complete that distance. The whole time, you're building up discipline, you're building up your muscles, you're building up, your cardio, everything. And sales teams are the same way, because if they've never been exposed to something, it can be absolutely overwhelming. And I won't say kill the patient, but it can be overwhelming to the point of being counterproductive not to work with them where they're at. And so, but the culture part of this, the first time that I got involved with an ACP company, we started implementing the culture change, and we had three of the people on the sales team decide to quit. And it was really a blessing in disguise, because they once the bar was set on performance expectation, they just voluntarily just said, hey, we're really not up for that. So everyone's got muscle memory, but the goal is to coach them into a higher performance, environment. Some people are on board with that, and some people aren't. And again, it was a blessing when they decided, hey, this really isn't for us, because the people that replaced them were up for that, and that led us to better performance.
How has your experience in this high value role so far influenced your process from company to company?
I try to keep things really simple. When I reflect back on my entire career, which now goes for more than, approaching 30 years in sales leadership type of roles, I think it all boils down to really two things: people and process. And of course, having process can get very complicated, but it really boils down to, I think, those two things. And so when there are problems, my experience has taught me it's usually a people person or a process issue. Maybe the person isn't trained right. Maybe there's just a lack of a process, or the process that is in place just won't meet the business requirements that are outlined. Conversely, when things are going great, it's usually because the company's got great motivated people and really well timed out process. And so I really think it boils down to those two things. I didn't know that 30 years ago, but today I think those are the two criteria. ACP senior operating partner Dave Tiley is a fantastic guy, a very talented person. And Dave would answer this by saying, it's all about how you row the boat. And rowing the boat means doing things, having everyone be on board, doing things the same way. He also would probably say it's like how you run a football play, because he's an old football coach. You can't have half the team running one play and half the team running the other. You all have to be on board with it. And so, again, I think that kind of supports what my experience has taught me is people and process.
Those are great lessons learned for sure. Can we dig in a little bit more to how your past experience has made your job easier, and maybe some examples from Premier Biotech, Pleatco, some of the companies that we've partnered at?
It takes a lot to surprise me now. It's not like, I'm definitely not a know-it-all. I said earlier, I'm still learning, but I think my experience has given me confidence to see where problems are, and I can see them quicker. And so nothing's ever easy, but it is easier to kind of identify some of the root issues. And sometimes those issues aren't just specific within the sales team. Maybe it's issues within, say, IT, which is obviously an area where WhiteRock is so helpful. Or maybe it's with marketing or lead generation. Maybe it's with a number of other areas outside the sales team. But my experience has really taught me that you really need everybody on board, and the playbook talks to this in the sense that the playbook addresses total company performance. sales always gets way too much credit and way too much blame when things go well or not well, but it's really, it's a team effort, it's a company effort. And so the saying everyone's in sales, I believe it, because if everyone's not motivated on supporting that customer, it'll show and they'll go somewhere else. As far as some examples of how, clearly my experiences help, we, at my first company, Pleco, that I worked with ACP, we made a number of organizational changes very quickly. And my experience definitely led me to those outcomes where just coverage of certain parts of the country, coverage of certain products, we just had to make some org changes. So that's just one example. But whether it's working with manufacturers reps, whether it's working with distributors, whether it's working with major accounts, I've had a lot of experience, and so far, even in these smaller companies, I've been able to apply that to help the ACP portfolio companies.
You spoke a little bit about the sales side of things. What do you see as key to a successful sales process?
One thing I've learned, and I credit Mike Griego for this, is that a really good sales process, a lot of sales teams, a lot of salespeople, if you were to ask them, hey, what's your process? They would probably answer you by saying, well, I offer my price and ask if they want to buy it from me. And what you learned when you go through the sales playbook process is that a real successful process is one that doesn't rush into offering a price, but uses the early stage of the process to really understand what's happening with the customer. And there's lots of different methodologies for this. I mean, I just recently got exposed to a qualification process called MedPick, which has been around for a while, but everyone has kind of done things a little bit differently to really understand, are you talking to the right person? What's their pain motivating their interest in talking to you? Are you talking to the buyer? Do they have the budget? And again, the goal in the early stage of the pipeline is to do discovery work and qualification work such that you're better listening for what's motivating their buying decision, number one, and number two, you're able to qualify it and potentially disqualify the opportunity so that you could save yourself time and work on more productive opportunities. So I'd say that the key is having that front end, that early stage of the pipeline where you could really qualify and understand what's motivating the buyer.
I'd love to jump in and talk a little bit about our partnership as well. How have you seen WhiteRock improve how the companies you work with are able to serve customers?
Yeah, well, we could talk for a while about WhiteRock. I mean, first of all, I have a lot of respect for WhiteRock, not just their competency of what these systems do, but just the integrity of Mike and the team that he's hired. If they say they're going to do something, they're going to do it. And I appreciate that, particularly when you consider what they're doing is hard and there's lots of unknowns, but the communication has been great. So, I mean, one of the big things that I've now learned is that, of course, a sales leader can, be gifted in working with their sales teams, but if they don't have the data and the systems at their fingertips, business moves too quickly not to be able to have that information. And so WhiteRock has been very key in putting systems together to allow not only sales leadership to see the activity and to see the progress and the status of the business, but also to enable our salespeople to be able to do their job better and more effectively, mainly by a more effective use of our CRM tool, which for all three of these companies has been Salesforce. And so having that data, having that environment where they can be more productive has been really invaluable to me. And all three of these companies really didn't have a robust, well thought out CRM system in place before we engaged with WhiteRock. So I definitely consider WhiteRock to be a partner, and a very important partner to deliver the kind of systems and value into the company that we need to grow and grow quickly.
That's great. So glad to hear that. What is it that you value most about working with WhiteRock?
I think it's really, as I said, a combination of two things. I think they're highly competent. I don't think in the years that I've been talking to the WhiteRock team have I ever said, "Wow, that's a tough one. I don't think I know how to do that." I mean, it seems like they know everything, and nothing's been put past them. And when you're working inside one of these companies, there is a tendency to get a little down on, wow, this is a real mess. I don't know how this is going to get fixed. But working with Mike and his team at WhiteRock, they've seen it all. They've done it all before. There's always a way to fix it and get it on the right track. And I really appreciate that. And then, as I said, when Mike says he's going to do something, he does it. And again, that's rare in the circle of partners that I've worked with in the past. And so, yeah, it's great.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Can we talk a little bit about the importance of open communication and collaboration within the partnership?
Yeah, I think that in any partnership, in any relationship, whether it's, my wife or close friends, I mean, you have to be able to speak openly, and you have to have that amount of trust. And again, I think that we have that. We have that with WhiteRock. We've had that in all of our engagements. We have regular communication. There's no need to micromanage what the team is working on for us, but we have regular communication. In fact, tomorrow we've got an update call on how things are going and where things stand. And so the open communication is just a must. The collaboration as well, I think, is also very important. Some of these companies have a strong IT person, some don't. And again, it doesn't make any difference from the WhiteRock side. We've learned, I think, a lot about how to work more effectively. And now, because WhiteRock has engaged with so many of these lower mid-market companies with ACP, I mean, they're like very focused and very detailed, and they know what needs to be done. And so the partnership is even more effective today than it was probably even 4 years ago.
Can you share any lessons learned or challenges that maybe come to mind during these engagements?
Just that I think that with all of these, I mean, there's usually always a bit of, as much due diligence as we try to do, there's always a little surprise that comes up during the meeting. And so I think that the real lesson is, don't be surprised if something pops up. It's going to be addressed. It's going to be worked on. A number of these systems, all of these systems, are usually homegrown systems that were done kind of seat of the pants. And so, yeah, there are surprises that come up, and don't be surprised when that happens.
Absolutely. That's great. How has this partnership with WhiteRock contributed to the growth and development of the companies that you've worked with? And how do you measure the success of WhiteRock solutions?
Yeah, well, the ultimate scoreboard of success for anyone in my role is whether sales increase or not. Fortunately, we've seen sales growth at all the companies, and sometimes that happens even without having WhiteRock involved. But I think the real successful measurement of having WhiteRock engage happens at the exit for these companies. And Pleatco was a very nice exit where ACP acquires these companies on a timeline, and at some point down the road, they'll sell these companies. Having a integrated CRM system that's tied into the ERP shows that the company has matured, that it's essentially already got a platform for growth and to scale. And it's hugely valuable to have that. But before you get to the exit, having WhiteRock enables, as I said earlier, for me to have data, for people to have a working CRM system at their fingertips, and that just enables them to do better, cover more customers more effectively. We have, in many cases, integrated or established a customer portal. So for our external customers to work with us, and that's something that WhiteRock brings to the party. And that's something that enables us to be more responsive to our customers, such that the company, in essence, provides 24/7 support by having a portal that's always up, always open, always capturing comments. And that's very meaningful because, again, it's a huge differentiator when we're able to react that quickly.
What are some of your biggest accomplishments over the past year?
We've done a lot of, at both the current company that I'm involved with, Premier Biotech, and last year I was involved with another company with WhiteRock called Stentech, both ACP portfolio companies. There was a lot of foundational work done at both of the companies, and it's dirty work, it's hard work, but it's necessary work to have the finish that everybody wants and to provide the foundation for growth as we expect to have. And so I would say the biggest accomplishment is really looking back and seeing the progress and recognizing that's maybe interim success, but still successful, because it's hard for these companies after so many years on their own to grow up rapidly. And we've seen that growth at both of these companies. And again, WhiteRock is a huge part of that.
Absolutely. There's a lot to celebrate there. What advice would you give to an organization considering a Salesforce partner like WhiteRock?
I would say sign them as fast as you can. But I would really say that, back to my earlier comment, to understand where you're at and understand where you want to go. And in many cases, this is the equivalent of running a half marathon. So be open to a phased approach, because it's okay to move the football from the goal line out to the 30 and then to the other 30 and then to the goal line. But Rome wasn't built in a day, and I would definitely think about a phased approach to get to where you need to go. That's probably the number one thing that I'd say. I'd also add that, looking at all of these companies in terms of a journey and providing a process for, the continuous improvement, just recognize it's going to have some ups and downs. But when you finally get there, and when you finally get the team to where it will get to, it will be not only professionally rewarding, but personally rewarding to see the growth, not only of the organization, but also the individuals, because the kind of investment that ACP makes in these teams and the coaching that we do, that doesn't happen at every company. And so I think it really is something that ACP should be proud of. It's a real differentiator for them. And that, of course, includes the IT investment that WhiteRock makes possible.
What is the most significant piece of advice you would give to somebody in your role at another company?
Yeah, I would just kind of repeat what I just said. Just recognize it's a journey. And again, if you're working with lower mid-market companies, you have to see where they're at, work with them where they're at. There's lots of great sales leadership training, sales process training. There's tons of material on that. But at the end of the day, you're working with people who have been in this mode, and they've done great to get to this point. But recognize where they're at, and then put a plan together to get them to where they need to be.
That's great advice, Pete. Is there anything else that you want to share during our time here today?
No, I think I've covered just about everything. I think the success that we intend to have and that we've had. It wouldn't be possible in this day and age without a great partner like WhiteRock helping us to mature these systems and make them a differentiator. And that's, again, I'm very thankful for the opportunity to express that to anyone listening, because it just makes it harder if you're just not able to have that system at your fingertips. So no, I'm very, very thankful for the partnership.
Thank you. A few kind of closing questions here. Do you have a favorite book for success that you would recommend to those tuning in?
Well, as I'm a Christian, and to me, there's lots of great business books out there on how to treat people, how to work with people and everything, but it all comes from the Bible. And so the book I read and try to read most frequently is that. And I find that most of the great advice was written there first. And so that would be my answer.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Pete. And where can those tuning in get in contact with you?
Well, I have a website, and I've got an email address. This is kind of a mouthful, but my website is Veltiosi Advisors, and Veltiosi is spelled VELTIOSI Advisors, ADVISORS. Or you can just send me an email at pete@veltiosiadvisors.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on Trailside Talk today, Pete. Really appreciate getting to dig into your story here.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Hope you have a great rest of your day, and thanks so much to everyone who took the time to tune in.
Well, that concludes another exciting episode of Trailside Talk. Thanks for joining, and see you on the next trail.